should be freely given. Again, it undermines the principle that consent should be freely given. For example, the fourth principle of the ESRC framework for research ethics states, research participants, in this case, us, we're your goats, remember, research participants must participate in a voluntary way, free from any coercion. That would be a vote. In conclusion, the opt-out was devised as a way to manipulate us, citizens of Kaysville. We know that. We recognize that. I wish you would, and you'd own up to it. It was very careless in the way it was written and presented as well. It was sent to utility holders, but obligates property owners. Whoops. Or was it? Oh, whoops. It was sent out in an by illegal email authority of 2 council members without public discourse and public review to establish a billing policy.
When the time
I
is
emphasize
up,
this is illegal.
I will not allow you to go
My
over it
question
because it's not fair.
is this a policy you're passing
You
tonight?
are my sunshine,
Thank you very much.
my only
Wow.
sunshine.
You are awesome.
I know.
You are. Here.
Thank you.
I didn't know singing was allowed.
All right. Brig Lewis. I am serious about the 3 minutes. And if you go over 3 minutes, you're forcing me to sing. And then nobody's listening to you, they're listening to me make a fool of myself.
I will do my best not to go over because that wasn't the best.
That was horrible. Go ahead.
Now, I got a couple of things in there. We talk about the reduction in fee. If the bond gets paid off, the likelihood of that ever happening is 0 to probably a -50. We have a fire bond on the fire station. That bond was paid off. We're still collecting the money. I don't believe that they will ever do anything that way. I want fiber. I would like fiber. But due to the lack of consistent information, I am going to opt out completely. I want no part of that in what I see us going. Every time I see a new list of potential costs, they are different from the ones before. And they always seem to be on the increase. I have yet to see any clear answers to many of my questions that I've tried to raise. One, if it breaks, who fixes it? All of the people in here who have Comcast, if your internet goes down at 1 o'clock in the morning, somebody will be there within an hour to fix it. Is that going to happen here? I doubt it. If you've got a computer telephone, you're dead. You can't make a call out. You can't get one coming in. Your system will be down. I can't see, if Comcast was my ISP, they're not going to come out and fix it. They don't own the fiber. Kaysville owns the fiber. I see that there's way too many issues that have never been cleared up. I would like fiber, but because I have no vision about how I can get it and use it affordably, and I've watched how Kaysville City has done things in the past, and I don't trust them. I just don't trust them. So I will opt out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zane Larson.
Mayor, going forward, if you would refrain from mocking those speaking, that would be appreciated.
Yes, my name is Zane Larson, and I would like to comment that when you said the 3 minutes is up, no one's listening to them. Well, Mayor, we're here for you and the council to listen to us, not for people behind us to listen to it. So I hope you understand the purpose of public comment. And I'd also like to say that this, with the opt-out form, it's very disingenuous. Many different meetings it said that we want to hear from the citizens, want to hear from residents, but do you really? You give people 1 month to opt out, and to hear from them. 1 month. it doesn't seem like a lot of time to actually hear from them, and so many people, this is their first, we've even heard tonight, this is the first time they've even heard about it, because the city has done such a poor job informing people who don't read Facebook. And I'd also like to say that this isn't a true survey. Surveys are objective. This survey has an objective, has an objective. It's saying, please select which speed of fiber services you would want for your household. I mean, that's not to ask a question with a presumption that you want fiber. That's not a survey. You're like, well, I can't check any of those. And then you get this pseudo-legal document that has already been pointed out that the city has no authority to prejudice the sale of homeowners. And it's even more telling when the city attorney won't comment on direct questions asked to him. I mean, it feels bad for citizens. It looks bad for the city. And no one wants our city council or mayor to look bad. We actually don't. And so that's why we're astonished when it happens. The whole opt-out form seems like strong-arm tactics. Like Nephi said, it is a way, it's clear to citizens, it's a way to get what the city wants. Because people who would want fiber internet have internet already and are actively seeking for something better. And those people who would be unwilling participants aren't knowing that they're going to have a nice extra fee added to their bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheryl Tarbett.
We've lived in Kaysville for over 40 years. And I came from Brigham City, and Kaysville felt like home. And I thought it was going to be a nice, just small hometown. You know, my dad was of the greatest generation. He was in World War II. And I'm a boomer. And my dad taught me that through the Depression, not to have a credit card. He taught me to pay off my bills, to keep my wants where I could afford them. And since we have moved here, the city has 4 bonds now. One of them that's been paid off, that's never been retired, they keep charging us for. We got 100% tax increase, and it just keeps going. I was taught that I take care of the needs of my family, and that's what I expect the city to do. There's a lot of the greatest generation that are still alive that know nothing about this little meeting that's going on, and they're going to end up being opted into something that they do not use, do not want, and shouldn't have to pay for. And I think the opt-in letter or opt-out letter, I didn't never see you approve it as a council. It was sent out to us, and it looks like blackmail. And I would like to say that this opt-in, opt-out is not Kaysville City-like. And all these bonds, all this big fancy police station, the big fancy house that you want to live in is not Kaysville City-like. And government has taken more and more and more of our money for things that we do not want. And I think there should have been a vote. And this opt-in, opt-out is not a vote. It is extortion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Baird.
Thank you, Council. Councilman Adams, I appreciate your candor and directness. That's really resonated with me this evening, so I appreciate the positions that you in particular have shared. I fully support fiber. I want it. I can't stand that Comcast is the only option. I want the free market. But I don't know whether to opt in or opt out because there's a lot of questions around this project that have not been answered. Is it going to be a dedicated line to the home, or is it going to be shared? I don't care either way. Fiber has the bandwidth to make sure that if it's a shared line, I can still get that gigabit that I want. It depends on the hardware that's on either end. So let's get the transparency around the technical aspects of that project. Is there a project manager? And if there is, why aren't they treating it like a project? Where's the implementation plan? Where's the maintenance plan? Where's the customer service? Where's all of that? How come that hasn't been put out there? All of that is important to me as to help me determine whether or not I want to opt in because this is something that I really, really want, or opt out because it's bad planning, bad implementation. With the financials, you've provided some information around just the costs of the project itself. What about basic city financials? What's the quick ratios? Where are the basic financial ratios? For example, the return on equity, the current ratio, quick ratio, once the project is done and the bonds are in place. Compare that with the city, with of course our city, but other cities that don't have the fiber and others that do, so we see that comparison. All of those financials inform that decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Hodges.
Councilman, Mayor, name's Tim Hodges. I just wanted to break something down. I'm a little confused because it says it's the proposed opt-out fiber, but it's already come to my door, and I don't know if it's been vetted because it's legally questionable. It's actually asking residents to give up their legal rights that they're protected by statutorily in jurisprudence, especially with that disclosure provision. The statute only requires me to disclose if I've had methamphetamines or stored methamphetamines in my house, and even then it's not, I don't have to disclose it if it was subsequently decontaminated. Jurisprudence only says I have to disclose something if it's materially defective on the property itself. This of course isn't. So you're asking the citizens to voluntarily give up their rights. So maybe we should revamp that and send out a new form with a better provision. As far as the opt-out, doesn't really make any sense in the fact that opt-out form is not binding. You say 50.1% comes back, then you'll let it go. But you also said it was going to a vote, and you used $200,000 to get it to a vote, but you never did. So how am I going to trust that? If 80% opt out and only 20% are there, you can still go forward with it because there's nothing binding. A vote is legally binding. This isn't. This isn't legally binding. All projects can fail. They all have risk. Y'all talk about fiber like it's going to be perfect and it's going to happen. Well, you Google fiber optics, municipal fiber optics, and it's riddled with failures, more than successes. So opting out of this, you're opting out of a service, and that's where people are confused. They think, well, we're opting out of this for forever. You're opting out of the service of getting the internet. But if the loan goes to default, then we're all on the hook. We're all co-signers. As taxpayers, we're co-signers to this bond, and we are on the hook for that. People are in their heads say, well, if I opt out, I'd never have to worry about this. I never have to pay. It's not true. If fiber fails and the loan defaults, the taxpayers will have to pay that obligation. And that's why if you're a co-signer on a loan, they can't just force you to do it. Somebody calls me up, hey, Dad, I need you to co-sign my loan. They can't force my signature there. I decide if I'm going to co-sign for that. And that's where the voters should be deciding if we're going to finance this risky project. And that's what we should be doing. Well, anyway, that's almost my time, and I'm not going to take any more. But this is just this hasn't been done right, and it's been legally insufficient since the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joss Healy.
I yield my time to somebody to get the start on my questions were asked.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. So we are going on to questions from council. Right. Okay. Councilmember Adams.
So, first of all, I'd like to question the legality of not only the document itself, but the legality of the fact that this document has already been sent out to approximately 9,000 households. And here it sits before us to be as proposed. Well, what if we don't approve it tonight? Do you then in turn tomorrow morning send out 9,000 letters saying, everybody scratch that, we oopsied again? What do we do? Like, quit, all of you, the TAC, all of you, the council, quit putting the cart before the horse on this. You have created a civil war that is 3 times greater than the police station civil war could ever dream of being. And I, for one, would love to resign from this body. And how ironic is that, right? Councilman Adams, the joke of Kaysville, is now wanting to resign and not be a part of you. Isn't that full circle? Now, number one, everyone needs to realize, okay, I've heard Comcast mentioned, CenturyLink mentioned. You all need to clearly...
It's questions.
Fine, I'll frame it as a question. Mr. Lortz, you're on the committee. Will Comcast, and take my time off, will Comcast and CenturyLink be available to our residents on Kaysville Fiber? Will they run on our fiber? Will they be an option as an ISP? Mayor, go ahead and answer it. No, Mayor, go ahead. Go ahead, you answer it. You're on the committee, go ahead.
Yes.
You serve a dual role.
Absolutely, they can be if they want to be.
Okay, has anyone spoken with them? Andre, have we spoken with Comcast and CenturyLink? So
We sent out an
keep those providers.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go out on a limb here because you don't have an answer. They are not going to run on our fiber. They will not. Can you imagine being Comcast and running on someone else's fiber that you don't own and operate? They are not going to do it, folks. Furthermore, what's going to happen is we are pushing ourselves out of the purview. We are putting ourselves on the back burner of the big incumbents of potentially bringing 5G to our community. We will be overlooked. If this goes through, we get to pay for this for 30 years and be married to it forever. Comcast and CenturyLink are going away. Who you're going to end up with are the mom and pop ISPs who I question how much lobbying they are doing to this body. I question that, but I will say it's the mom and pop ISPs that you will get to choose from. You will not have the big service providers. They will not run on our fiber. So you'll run on your old copper if you want to keep them and you'll opt out. But you will get the mom and pop ISPs, and how reliable are they? American Fork, who we're looking at teaming up with, created AF Connect. Go Google AF Connect and how happy American Fork was with AF Connect when that was their service provider on their failed 2 fiber optic projects. It didn't go well. So you're gonna lose those options. You're gonna lose the big dogs. They go away. So people just need to be clear of that. We don't need to be vague and say, well, we sent them a letter, and if they don't want to play in our pond, then so be it. No, we need to be very clear. They are not going to run on our fiber. So I question, let's get back to the point here. Is it legal? Is it legal that 2 of you council members, and I've put it on Facebook, Councilmember Kerr and Councilmember Barbara, and I don't know why you're laughing, Michelle, the OMA is serious stuff. Just because government doesn't typically police government doesn't mean you guys haven't broken a law. Shane, you, sir, asked for 3 votes in an email to send this out last week. I, for one, would like to know who is, Mayor, have a little decorum. Who is the 3rd vote? Because in our email chain, only 2 of you, these 2, you 2 over there, and you chimed in. Who's the 3rd vote? Larry, was it you? Jake's not here. Was it Jake? Shane? Who's the 3rd vote?
No, now
then we will groundly request your emails.
What this is, hey, I can have, there is no, you do not get to shout out
OMA has been violated.
You don't get to shout out from the audience. You will be removed. You will be removed. I don't have the answer to that. I don't have the answer to that. All right.
Shane, you authored the email. Who was the 3rd vote?
I think our...
Hold on, pause, he's looking it up.
Do you know what? You are breaking our rules, which is you are questioning the integrity of our council members by asking who
I am not blaming Shane. He
I would
asked
like
for-
to
he
know
asked
if
for-
Comcast is paying your mortgage.
Well, they are
That's what I
actually.
want to know.
Boy,
Yeah.
way to go. Grab the mystery vehicle, Shaggy. Come on, Scoop. You solved it there.
Hey, if you're going to point fingers
You're getting
at
pretty
these council
defensive
members,
here. You're
if you're
getting
going to
awkwardly defensive.
If you are
This
going
is
to point
really
at my
awkward.
council members saying that they have
Your
broken the
council
rules,
members?
yes, you
Yeah,
are mine too.
you do mine. I am
You are
not
mine
yours.
too.
I am not yours. That is where you are wrong.
but
You
listen-
are so confused on the role of government. You represent them. You do
Yes.
not own us. We represent them. You represent
are
them.
in-
They're here to
you
talk.
are
They're here to
violating
hear
the
us.
integrity
You
of
need to
this
stop.
office.
You are off the rails.
No,
Our government is eroded in town because of you.
you
You have been a villain. You have been a wolf in sheep's clothing.
You are violating our code of conduct.
You have the right to remove me. I want an answer. Who's the third vote?
Shane, can you?
I actually think all 4 council members responded in the affirmative, but I haven't looked
You
it up.
shouldn't say it in all 4. You should say 4 out of 5 minus
I-
Dave Adams. Stop it. You are breaking OMA. Nick, you need to do a better job of protecting them. Believe it or not, I do care about them at the end of the day. You should be protecting them. That's a violation of OMA. Let me explain to the people. Let me calm myself down and explain to some people here who may not understand what we're getting at.
Is this a comment
You-
or a question?
You sent out a document to 9,000 homes on the biggest project that Kaysville has ever even dreamed about undertaking without a legal permission and vote from this body. You've already sent it out. I don't even know why it's on the agenda. You are wasting our time with it on the agenda. It's already in their homes. You've already put people in a position of inverted Russian roulette. There's not 1 out of 6 in the revolver chamber. There's 5 out of 6. And you're just saying, go ahead and take your pick. You are not being fair with the people at all. And it is the gentleman who said, I'm sorry that I didn't know about this. Sir, it's not your fault. The fault is on us. The survey that initially went out for this project had questions like, do you want faster internet? Do you want better internet? Who in the world would say no to those questions? You didn't have one question on that survey a year ago that said, are you interested in forming a utility? Are you interested in a $50 million gross bond? You didn't have one question of that nature on there. That was not a survey. If that was in a courtroom, any attorney would say, Your Honor, leading objection, you're leading the witness. It was the most ridiculous survey ever.
All right.
You don't have the guts to let this stand on its own.
Nick, do you have any answer to Councilmember Adams?
I looked at the email, and I'm not sure that Shane has the authority to convene a meeting, so I don't think there was a technical violation of the law. But also, if there was, and I don't think there was, this action tonight would remedy that.
All right. Okay. So that is the answer to your question.
Mayor?
Yes, Shane.
I ask for clarification all the time from the city council, and I don't apologize for that.
You were seeking
It's not the
clarification.
role of the city council to, it's the role of the city council to establish a policy. If we want to do an opt-out policy, that's fantastic. That's what we need to know as staff. Once we know that that policy is in place, it's the staff's responsibility to put a letter together we work with professionals in the industry to do that, and once we do that, that's the staff's responsibility. We're not asking the council to accept the letter that we put together. We put it together and we send it out. Before we did send it out, before we wanted to go to the expense of sending it to 9,000 homes, I wanted to make sure that that was the direction you wanted to follow. So if this direction action tonight is to me is just a reaffirmation to the community that you are taking the opt-out seriously, that you're going to take the opt-outs that are delivered and you're going to accept them and you're going to remove them from the project. That's all this is.
Disagree.
All right. And I would like to move on. We had Is there any other question?
Yeah, I have a question. Mayor,
No,
you
it
got
is
awfully
not your
defensive
turn. It
about
is not your
lobbying.
turn.
Are you being lobbied by anyone in the
No.
fiber industry?
0 people, zero
I'm
businesses.
glad that's on record.
And I want to know if you are being lobbied on the record.
Yeah,
move on. I
Comcast,
have a question.
CenturyLink, all the ISPs, yeah,
I have a question.
absolutely.
Yes, what's your question, Michelle?
Maybe
Councilmember
Dean can
Barber.
speak to this, but there was a question about the ranges and why there are ranges in the survey. Can you speak to that?
I think after the last meeting, the Technical Advisory Committee listened to that meeting and felt like it was appropriate to go with an opt-out policy to allow for opt-out. So as we put together the financial model, there's a range there depending on how many people opt out. And so we felt it was appropriate to put a range there saying, this is what the cost will be, but we won't know the final cost until we have all the data and we can put together the financial model.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have another question.
Councilmember Barber.
I'm assuming Shane would probably be the best one to ask this question. About maintenance, that was the question. Who is responsible for any outages or problems for the customer?
Well, I don't know if that's been determined. One of the real benefits of the interlocal with Light Hub was that we could perhaps do maintenance as a cooperative with other cities. But if we decide not to partner with Light Hub on that portion of maintenance, we could have our own internal people. We could consult with outside consultants. So there's a lot of different ways we could still go.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember DeCare.
No, comment. So.
One question that I don't know the answer to that was brought up actually by the gentleman who's a home or a...
Speak up.
Just ask the question.
All right, I'll speak up, sorry.
Well, we can still barely hear you now. Just don't get offended.
Just ask the question. You'll be fine.
Property owner, who assumes the risk? Is it the resident, obviously, or not the resident, the tenant, or the property owner? I guess I'll defer that to Shane. I'm assuming it's the property owner, although if the tenant signs up for it and leaves after 2 years.
It's my understanding in the form that we had that if you are a tenant, you had to have if you wanted to opt out, you had to have the property owner also acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Barber, did you have another question?
No, a comments when we get
All right.
Wait, clarifying, is
Okay.
that stated on the document? Is that stated in the opt-out, the property owner clause, Nick? Because you say it's right
It's
there.
on the opt-out form.
Yeah.
on the opt-out.
Okay. Councilmember Page.
I have a comment.
All right. Comments. Comments. All right. I would ask for a motion at this time. Unless there's more questions.
Can I have one of my questions answered?
We will do that in comments.
I'll make a motion that we approve the opt-out fiber policy.
Second? Anyone?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Comments now. Let's go with Councilmember Barber. Did you have some answers to the question that was asked?
The first one I had is a technical answer about the active versus passive networks on the it's actually in the FAQ on the website that we're looking at active dedicated lines to each person's home, for whoever asked that.
Which is a lot more costly for people, in layman's terms. Active is a lot more expensive.
That is what's been budgeted for, so we'll do the most cost-effective way of getting the best service.
Comments? Councilmember Page.
Yeah, just a quick one. First of all, this has been confusing, hasn't it? Completely. And I apologize for this area too. I remember the first planning commission I went to. You can't even hear out in the audience. It's super tough. I know that. and I apologize for that. You know, this whole process, it has been confusing, and I admit to that. But, and you know, and I asked the question one time to Ryan, our IT guy, and I says, why does this have to be confusing? And he said, well, the reason is, he says it's transparency. It is what it is. When it comes down to it, we're a government. He said if we were a corporation, we could smooth it, we could run it by everybody, we could have it perfect, and then we could roll it out. This isn't how it works. In a government, ideas come up, we think about it, we discuss it. This process hasn't been going for 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's been going for months. It's been going for over a year. All right? Does that make sense? I know a lot of people don't understand it. Because, you know, if they haven't been engaged, they don't know, and I appreciate that. And it's not perfect. Can I just answer, let me answer just one of your questions. Why don't we put it to a vote? And I'll be honest with you, I wanted a vote. But then I thought about it. Let me ask you this question. I called the head guy at Davis County that's over elections. Any idea what the percentage of registered voters are in Kaysville? 65%. 65.
Don't shout out.
65%. Now let me ask you this. What is the highest percentage of voters ever in the history of Kaysville that came out for an election? 51%. Our average is in the 20s. So I guess I'm asking you, we make a decision on fireworks, so we have the majority of the minorities making a decision for the majorities. And I'm not in favor of that. One good thing about this is it allows more people to get involved and see it and make a decision. Here's the problem. If the majority of the people in a vote for it, you're going to have a heck of a lot of people that's going to have fiber forced upon them. And so that's something to think about. We're just trying to make a transparent way for people to be able to make that decision. And that's just one of the questions. Probably my time.
Okay. All right. Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Councilman.
Under what definition of transparency, I would ask. But I would also ask, let's get back to the real estate clause here that forces these homeowners to say, you know, you will disclose this. Nick, why didn't you answer Mr. Dowland's question on the phone about that, where you get the authority to usurp Utah state real estate law, and where you think you can, what grounds legally you think that we have to stand on to require that?
Yes.
Don't look at her, just answer.
That, Mayor, this is comments.
This is comments.
Would you like me to answer it?
You're so clever with
Yes, go ahead and answer.
You know, I explained this to Mr. Hutchison on the phone, and granted, maybe not as clearly as he would have liked.
Don't shout out.
I don't know that this is super enforceable, but this is, I think the intent was to have some kind of advisory opinion on here, advisory language that would allow people to recognize that this might impact the value of their home in the future, and that this might be something that they need to disclose in the future. I don't think that Kaysville City could, and I don't think it was the intent of the people that drafted this and people that reviewed it to say Kaysville City is going to go out and enforce this as a contract. But I think it was something that people should know about as they make this decision. It's a big decision. It's a lot of money one way or the other.
Yeah, and I would agree that I don't think it's legally enforceable. I know that the city doesn't want to, I don't think we have the staff to be able to enforce it. So I think that...
Why is it in there then?
You know, I think it was a suggestion.
Because it's a fear tactic. What you guys need to start doing when you do anything is you need to go and have a completely unbiased third party review what you're doing and say, how does this feel to you? How does this come across? Instead of your biased lenses that are 20/20 for the vision of this project and none other, looking through that and going, yeah, this looks great.
That's called fear-mongering, Councilman Adams.
Oh, no, that's what the opt-out is.
No, that's...
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It's full of fear-mongering.
All right.
You're full of fear-mongering.
Anyway, all right.
Okay, well, I'm not done.
Okay.
So, you know, as I sit here and listen to all this, something has come to my mind. We sent out approximately, what, 9,000 letters? Shane?
I have no idea.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
interesting. Does anyone know how many letters went out? How many
About
opt-outs?
9,000.
Okay, so about 9,000 opt-outs went out. Let's say that we only get 5,000 of those returned to us. What about the other 4,000? Or let's shrink it down. Let's say 7 out of the 9, fill it out and send it in. What about the other 2,000? Do they not matter?
Upon the property owner to fill out.
I've got the microphone, but we'll patiently await for your dig. Go for it.
or am I paying it later? And so that was the one question I wanted to answer for you. And it's on the website as well with more detail.
Okay. All right. Okay. Councilmember Barber.
Vote, right?
Substitute motion.
Go ahead.
I motion that we deny the opt-out agreement due to questionable legality of wording in it.
Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion passes 3-1. Okay, refinancing police station bond, a resolution of the City Council of Kaysville City, Utah, authorizing and approving the execution and delivery of a master lease
Mayor, if I
agreement.
may, there's just, folks, before you leave, and I'm probably breaking code here.
Point of order.
I'm going to say it. There is a referendum opportunity that you have, okay? So stay involved, be involved, stay engaged with the project. This council doesn't have the ultimate authority at the end of the day. You do.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thanks for that public service announcement, Councilman Adams.
Okay, and let me finish reading this. Refinancing police station bond, a resolution of the City Council of Kaysville City, Utah, authorizing and approving the execution and delivery of a master lease agreement by and between the City and Municipal Building Authority of Kaysville City, Utah, the authority, and a ground lease agreement, authorizing the issuance and sale by the authority of its lease revenue bonds, Series 2019, in the aggregate principal amount of not more than $4,400,000 and related matters. Dean, is it you?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As we just mentioned, one of the mechanisms to finance buildings.
Can you
so
come
hard to
to the
hear, yeah.
podium? This microphone is better.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay,
For
thank
me
you,
it
Mayor.
is.
As we just discussed, one of the mechanisms to finance public facilities, public building is through a building authority. We issued bonds originally in 2014 for the financing of the police station through a building authority. Over the last several months, we've seen interest rates drop significantly. So we think it's a great opportunity, and it would be wise to consider the refinancing of those bonds. The preliminary indication is the interest rate of about 1.8% true interest cost. You may recall that the original bonds were issued in 2014 at a true interest cost of about 3.5%. In 2017, we refinanced those and dropped it to about 2.8. This now gives us an opportunity to drop the interest rate even more. The gross present value savings is about $220,000 over the life of the bonds, or about $20,000 per year. So the action tonight would be to take action on the refinancing, where you would enter into a lease agreement with the building authority and authorize the building authority to issue those refunding bonds. And then later on tonight, there would be another action from the building authority to issue those bonds.
Okay, thank you.
Dean, I have a question.
First, we are going to have public comment. Do I have the sheet for this? Zane Larson. Okay, thank you. All right. Now we'll go to questions. Councilmember Barber?
Maybe you can stay there. One of the questions asked of me is, this includes those savings that you stated are after all costs of the refinance itself?
That is correct.
Just wanted to clarify that.
And maybe I'll mention as well, we do have two representatives from Zions Bank that are helping us with this financing, Brian Baker and Jonathan Ward, and they can answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
I'm the only guy that doesn't have a mic. Hey, just a question, Dean. If we refinance this, are we starting where the other ones, like for example, say we have 8 years left on the contract with the other one, is that where we're starting, or are we adding time to it? Or?
No, We're about 10 years left on these bonds. We anticipate to keep the same term that's remaining, the 10 years, and just take advantage of the annual savings through the reduction in interest rates.
Okay, so we're basically the same amount of time to wrap it up. Okay.
What is the cost to refi?
To refinance? Between financial advisory fees and bond counsel and trustee services, it's about $60,000.
Does that include underwriting fees?
There would be no underwriting on these bonds.
So a gross cost of 60 grand. So you've done this once before. We're looking at doing it again. So $120,000 that will, if this goes through tonight, that we will have paid out in refi costs. And you're saying it's going to save us 20 grand a year going forward now, right? Seems to me like there's you know, I'd love to be the recipient on the refi side of this. You know, I get we're saving a little bit of money too. Who are the bonding people that you're working with? Are they the same as we're working with on fiber? The council?
We haven't decided yet on fiber.
That's not my question.
No, in preliminary
Well,
discussion. Let me answer the question.
We have bonding counsel for fiber. They were here last meeting, and we have a we have a financial advisor. She was here as well. Are they the same people?
They are not.
What?
They are not the same people.
Great. Glad to hear it. So 60 grand each time we refi this loan.
The 60 grand, as Michelle asked the question, the savings, it includes those costs.
It's after that, yeah.
The what?
The savings includes the cost of the financing, of the professional services.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move that we approve refinancing of police station bond.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Takar, seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments? Sorry. Okay, Councilmember Takar.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. Okay, now we'll go to our work items. Proposed changes to procurement threshold.
Mayor, City Council, the staff has collectively expressed some concern with the $25,000 threshold. Anything over $25,000 is brought to the council, usually in a consent item. We've actually had some, Councilmember Garn has also reached out believing that this number is too low, that there are times when efficiency or timeliness or availability of certain products have been compromised. And we've had a change order a couple of times where we've had to solicit your opinions about those items in between council meetings because they were timely as well. So we have a recommendation in your packet. Again, this is just a work item. Keep that in mind. And of changing that threshold from $25,000 to $50,000. Mostly the justification in that is that a lot of times we purchase vehicles and they're almost always under $50,000 unless they are a high dollar ticket item that would be over 50. But again, we completely leave this to you. We believe that this would increase efficiency. These are all budgeted items anyway. We vet most items out that are over $50,000 at the budget during the budget process as well. But if you feel strongly about $25,000, that's okay. We just wanted to let you know that we think we can increase efficiencies and purchase things in a better way if that $25,000 is changed to 50 or whatever number you feel is justified.
Okay. All right. General discussion at this point. Any strong feelings about this? Councilmember Barber, questions?
Question for Shane. So this is only in the procurement policy. It's not changing the timeline or the process that has to go forward in choosing the lowest bid, for example. It's just the threshold.
Absolutely correct. And including the city manager still must sign all POs over $10,000. So there's always two eyes over everything that's over $10,000 as well.
Okay, this is so hard to hear. I just didn't hear that very clearly.
Oh,
it's just
sorry.
So hard to hear.
The answer is yes. There's nothing else changing.
Okay.
They're including in that items that are not changing is that the city manager must approve all expenditures over $10,000, and that's still included in there. That's not changing. That's not proposed to change anyway.
Thank you.
Councilmember Adams.
Is that entirely accurate, that nothing else? So just the purchasing threshold is going from 25 to 50,000?
That's what I'm proposing, yes.
Well, how come the change orders are going up as well, the threshold there?
Right.
Well, you just told her that nothing else is changing.
Yeah,
But
right, everything
The
that-
change order, because you're forbidden to do a change order over $25,000 without our approval right now.
What I said was that the threshold for what goes to council, it was changing from 25,000 to 50,000. And that's true of change orders as well as the day-to-day
No, she
purchases.
specifically asked if it was purchases. Okay, you're increasing the change order threshold as well. So, just so people are aware, we had 4 years ago when I came on council, there were some serious issues with some things going on in the city, and the threshold was at $50,000, and we got it reduced to $25,000 to help curb that off and to help slow the flow of the amount of money that gets spent. American Fork, the city that we're looking at that this council is looking at teaming up and doing fiber with, they're a similar size to us in population. They're about 30,000 people. Well, their threshold is 25 grand as well. I find 25 grand to be a very responsible level. I don't think we should be doubling this to $50,000, council. And I would also add, I was able to attend an American Fork City Council meeting just recently, and I was impressed by the level of detail that American Fork goes into when it comes to approving. When you do a subdivision, the developer has a 1-year warranty period, and he has a punch list that he gets at the beginning of the 1-year warranty period, and when the warranty period is up, that punch list has to be satisfied, and there's a bond in place for that. Well, I was just enthralled to see, I mean, they had photos up here, they were reviewing cracked concrete, they were discussing it, how much should be approved and not be approved. I mean, they got into detail, and I thought it was fantastic. And they also, in their councils, approved every other week, every council meeting, they approved anything over $25,000. We as a council, is in about 2017, I think, so this predates you, Mayor. You can preclude yourself from my comments here. But this council, actually just Larry Page is in the room, is around. They took away the council's authority to approve the claims every meeting. You see, folks, we used to get a packet full of claims. We don't approve those anymore. If you notice, we haven't voted on those in years. So that's eroded and diluted away. Yes, we have the authority to dig into them. I've asked several times about things, it goes nowhere, but to now in turn take this and turn back the clock and ratchet it from 25 grand to 50 grand, I disapprove. And I'm not just trying to defend a piece of legislation that I worked fervently on. I'm saying I don't think it's responsible, and I, for one, am tired of hearing the excuse of efficiencies, efficiencies, efficiencies. I've heard that excuse made so many times. You know, Shane, we worked very hard on a vehicle policy back in 2017 when you first started here as well. And then a year later, you diluted that policy by embedding fine print into the Human Resources Manual. We mandated that all city employees will drive a city vehicle with the city logo on it. You now allow, at your discretion, certain people to have a vehicle personal allowance, and the city buys them personal vehicles that are unmarked. So how much watering down are we going to keep doing here? Are we going to act like a real city and a real corporation? I mean, you have a department head who drives around in a nice jacked up F-150. Nobody even knows he's a city official when he shows up or goes somewhere. So that's a little off topic, I get that, but you talk about now wanting to spend 50 grand at the whim of what you guys want and not bring it before us. I don't think that the people we represent would appreciate us putting it back to 50 grand. I think 25 grand keeps you going along quickly. And I've got one more question on point. Shane, you said that you have emailed this council, you've had to email this council and get approval for change orders when they exceed the $25,000 threshold. Can you help me understand, when did you do that? Can you give us an example of one of those projects?
I can. It was like the road work.
A month ago.
Yeah, road work.
Okay, what?
Sunset. Road work.
500 East, I believe, had some road base that hadn't been put down. And
any other examples?
I'm not prepared to answer.
Fair enough.
We've done it a couple times.
fair enough.
Okay. Can we let another council member have a turn now? Are you done? Okay. All right, motion.
Well, this is an action, or it's a work item, so
Yeah,
we're
do
gonna,
we want to do anything with this?
Well, I'll move that we move the proposed changes of procurement threshold to an action item on the next agenda, which there it'll be under further discussion, but, so.
Okay, there was a
Repeat your
motion
motion.
to move this to an action item. Anybody want to second that? Okay, we don't want to second that, so, yes.
Let me make a motion that, you know, and I want to get to the comment period, okay? But I make a motion that we leave it as it is, $25,000.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Page and seconded by Councilmember Adams.
Vote.
And now comments. Councilmember Farber.
That was just going to be my comment as well.
Okay, all right.
Can I make a comment? You know, when it comes down to it, government's messy, always is. It's never going to be as efficient as the private sector. But, you know, when it all comes down to it, it's not the city's money, is it? It's the people's money. And I think that any time that there's accountability, yeah, it's not quite as efficient, but I think it's important that we understand that. And we go through the channels, and even though it's slower and everything else, I think the council who's representing the people make sure that they know what's going on and make that commitment. And I know that 25,000 is kind of low, but I just think that that's not too much to ask, and that's my opinion.
Can I make a point of order, Mayor?
Sure.
Nothing but what you're just saying. I think, though, we can't vote on this, so I would just move that we strike this from the agenda and it doesn't come back to us.
Or the other thing we can do is just
It's not a motion to move it forward.
We could just let it go.
Yep, it
Yeah,
just doesn't
not
move
have a vote.
forward.
Right. Okay, good deal. All right, so.
Agreed.
Agreed?
We can move on.
Agreed, okay. So we'll move on. Consideration of an ordinance amending the city's records law.
Mayor, members of the City Council, there's an ordinance in your packet tonight that has just a few changes to our records law. It just kind of explains further that city business that's discussed through a personal email or a cell phone, a text, should be forwarded to the city recorder's office, which actually the records officer in this case, and that city employees, appointed officials, and elected officials should provide assistance to help get that done. There's quite a bit of records committee case law on this. There was a case where two council members were texting back and forth on personal cell phones, and they had to turn those over, and people have tried to circumvent grandma through using personal email accounts. This is really just designed not really to change anything that we wouldn't already be subject to. It's just really to give appointed officials, employees, and elected officials notice that that's likely what will happen if these records get grandma requested. Any questions?
Okay, so, Councilmember DeCarrot, it sounded like you had a question.
I did. So just for a point of clarification then, so this is just highlighting the fact that your personal email and your personal cell phone are subject to review.
Yes, if you're going to conduct city business, it should be through the official
Correct,
channels,
right,
preferably.
Yes.
But yeah, you're exactly right.
Right, okay, all right. Thank you.
A question,
Councilmember Adams.
it's not just highlighting, it's amending the ordinance. It's not just highlighting something that's already there, it's an amendment to the ordinance. I, for one, would say that this is going to stifle communication with the elected body. When people start to realize, oh, I can't have a private communication with a council member, I'll keep my mouth shut. And I think enough of that has been going on over the last 18 months, and I think enough of communication has been curbed off. If anything, we need to foster more communication with our constituency. Not the fear that if they share a private feeling on something and we have to turn that over to the recorder. I mean, I, for one, you'll have, if it's something personal to somebody, you can just pry it out of my cold dead hands. Because I'm not going to violate somebody's confidence in me that they share something with me. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I respect your dedication to privacy, Councilmember Adams, but GRAMA and the Records Committee would likely require that if you're conducting city business through a personal cell phone or through personal email, that they're going to require the city to produce those.
Is it city business if you're discussing topics with people? That's not really city business, is it? So I guess that's not a big deal anyway. I mean, if you're, what kind of city business, define city business?
Well, probably the clearest example was that case that the Records Committee had where two council members were discussing the item and it wasn't here, it was in another municipality, but they were discussing the item that was being voted upon during the meeting on their personal cell phones. When those records got requested, GRAMA requested, they said, well, they're personal cell phones, and the Records Committee said, you got to turn those over if you're discussing items on the agenda during a meeting. Those are records.
Okay, interesting. Kind of like voting on an opt-out via email before it gets sent out, or officially voted on.
An official channel.
Hey, just
Okay.
a question.
Councilmember Page.
Are we aware of any city that's done something like this?
I didn't do a survey of other municipalities. I would imagine that, I mean, I don't know that they've ever amended their code because the Records Committee has made that case law. But a lot of people don't read the Records Committee decisions, and so we felt like it was appropriate in this case to just bring this to people's attention and to be able to say, as part of, you know, newly elected officials or newly appointed officials, we could point to this and say, you know, rather than read a case from the Records Committee, we tried to summarize that and make it concise so that you could, we could easily say these are going to be required to be produced.
Yeah.
Just clear things up.
Sunshine laws.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I apologize, I've referenced GRAMA several times. That's a Government Records Access and Management Act.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember DeCare, something?
Oh, no, nothing, I'm good.
Okay. So, Councilmember Barber?
So what you're looking for us is feedback or
Well,
changes?
whatever you'd like to do. I mean, if it's acceptable, we just ask that you move it to an action item for the next meeting.
Does state law not suffice?
Well, I mean, you could make an argument that the case law, the Records Committee case law, and in conjunction with GRAMA is pretty clear. State law doesn't address state law treats this as a very general topic, and they say if you conduct city business, you need to turn that over through a GRAMA request. And then you have to go to the Records Committee case law to really define how you're gonna interpret that law.
And to be clear, after we adopt this, it would be from that point onwards that we would be held responsible.
Oh, yeah, correct.
For that.
No ex post
Okay.
facto. We couldn't hold you
Right.
accountable or anybody accountable this before it was passed. It would be from the date that the ordinance was adopted forward, this would be applicable.
But not entirely true, though. You're still accountable. We're still accountable to the GRAMA laws that are in place. We're just not accountable from today behind today to take everything and give it to Maria within 2 days. You know, I mean, the real change is here. You're just saying, hey, be proactive and give it to Maria within 2 days. You know, but we're still accountable to grandma, you know, for prior communications or whatever. You know, and I mean, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I mean, having this OMA violation that's been raised not by myself, but many others, whether you guys feel it is or not, you're blinded to it. But it's not the first time I've seen that. So I also fear that there will be targeting by this policy being put in place, that future council members who find themselves not in the majority could potentially be targeted. And their private communications could be, you know, demanded and browsed upon, and I don't agree with that. I think you're overreaching a little bit with this, and I find it just unnecessary. I think grandma covers things good enough, you know. So.
Okay. Councilmember Page.
You notice I'm the only one that doesn't have a mic. Hey, just a quick thing. I know that some cities, I remember at a convention, we had some attorneys talk about this very thing, and I know some cities and what they were recommending, and I do not recommend this, but some cities actually purchase cell phones, and all the council members and the mayor, they have to use that for business, and then automatically the city has a record of what they're doing. I personally think until this is mandated from the state, this is a tough old deal, and I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we're paid enough to go through this abuse. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, Councilmember Page, if I could just address that briefly, I recognize that it is somewhat of a burden. I think that the city provides a city email that you could, and I'm not saying your position's unreasonable, I'm just maybe giving another viewpoint. The city does provide an email address that you can use to conduct city business, and I mean, candidly, the Records Committee is going to require you to do this, and they're going to, I think there's a fine that they will assess against the city if we don't produce these documents. So I think we've tried to approach this as a way to make you aware of what's going to be required. I mean, Councilmember Adams is in a large extent correct. State law, grandma and case law together kind of cover this. And so, I mean, that kind of cuts both ways. In one sense, it's like, well, why do we need this ordinance?
Classes and make sure that they understand what's appropriate and not appropriate, and live by those rules. And I think that that's probably the best thing.